The one thing we're not afraid of is to know that we need to continue to grow. And that's all of us as leaders, as sales reps, as production managers.
Welcome to the Sales Made Simple podcast. This podcast is dedicated to helping overwhelmed outdoor living professionals, landscapers, and hardscapers just like you increase your closing rate to over 75% without doubling your workload so you can build a seven-figure business that doesn't need you. I'm your host, Joshua Gillow. Let's dig in. Hey everybody, welcome back. This week we have Sam Rankin on. He owns Etch Outdoor in the Des Moines area, and he's going to talk about his business. So, Sam, welcome on the show.
Pleasure to be here, Josh. It's been fun watching.
Yeah, hey, it's thank you for continued support, and I can't wait to unpack your business. Hopefully, the listeners get a lot of value today. I know you're growing one heck of a business out there in Des Moines. So, tell us a little bit about your business. How long have you been in business, and what exactly do you guys specialize in?
Yeah, started it back in 2018. I started previous to that. Like every kid, I was push mowing the neighbor's lawn, and eventually that just kind of spiraled into what it is today as a byproduct of some really good people that we hired along the way. Our main focus is to be the best site management company. I know a lot of design build related stuff on your show here, and that's a big arm of what we do, but we've made it a conscious effort that we're going to grow maintenance. We are going to continue to push those repeatable, scalable services that we can do over and over and over, and a little bit less on the design build side. Not that we're not dedicating resources to growing it, but that's our bread and butter is making tall grass short, making weeds disappear, clearing snow, kind of the easy stuff. A lot less sexy, but definitely a lot easier to run.
Got it. Yeah, everyone can pick their bucket they're going to play in, right? Their sandbox, if you will. So you pick one that really lights you up, and that's what matters. So last year, what was an average design build project size for you guys last year?
Somewhere in I don't have this. You stumped me on the pre-show notes. I don't have this one up. An average job, pretty typically, if you take all of the landscape jobs, and I was pretty surprised at this myself, but when I looked last year, an average job for us is only $5,000 or even a little bit less, because we do have a lot of, half day, go plant 2 trees. Well, that still counts as a job. Now, if we look at, a typical hardscape job per se, our average jumps quite a bit. We're up into the $25,000 range. And so, for every $12,000 simple 12 by 12 patio with a wood burning fire pit kit we throw on top to, on the other end, we're doing 1 or 2, or this year actually like 5 or 6. And, we're doing 5 or 6 of the 150 plus range that gets pretty exciting, gets pretty fun.
Do you guys like being on site for weeks or months on end for those big ones?
Does our production manager like being on site for that long? Yes. Do our crews? Yeah. I think there's something to be said about some job fatigue, showing up to the same place every day. And so we try to do a really good job of breaking it out into incremental wins. We do that in the office with our goals, but we don't necessarily do a great job of that in the field with field staff and production crews. And so trying to break it up, we've kicked it around. We've never actually done it, but I also think it'd be interesting to see if you had a crew work through point A on the job. Maybe it's, all the walls are done, and then the next crew comes in to do all the pavers and exhaustscape, and seeing if there was a relative increase in efficiency and production rates. I don't know. I think there is something to be said though about the kind of loathing showing up to the exact same place you've already been for 6 weeks. I think that gets tiring. I do. So.
Logically from a business perspective, that all the equipment's there, everything is great. The problem is that you start to wear out when you're just tired of that same spot and the same people in the same driveway and the same problems and the same mud, right? Yes, just like something new would be fun, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely agree.
Awesome. So on that, and I know you have a plethora of different sizes of projects you work on. What would you say your average close rate is for your projects as you are right now?
Yeah. So and we look at it 2 different ways, and we look at it based on just number of jobs closed versus proposed. We're sitting about 63% last year for that. But when we look at it as a percentage of revenue, closed revenue versus proposed revenue, we're closer to 25%. Couple reasons that is one, you propose multiple opportunities to one client. You've got hey, here's a $260,000 option, and here's a $390,000 option. I just did that to a client late last week. And so we do that from time to time, so that does kind of skew it a little bit.
Mhm.
I would guess it's higher than that if you just look at a one per client basis. But yeah, about 63%, and that does include our design proposals as well, because that is a sale. That's the first sale
Mhm.
we make with a client,
Yep.
and I do think there's a level of importance to make sure we close an incremental small sale to make it easier to close that big sale thereafter.
Yep. 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 Building trust and moving them through with some momentum, right? So tell us a little bit
Absolutely.
about how handle design and what does that look like for your client?
We require it anytime we're doing anything creative. So if a client has the black poly rubber edging that everybody hates, landscapers love because they know they get to replace it, I'm not going to design that job. I'm going to go out there with a
Mhm.
wheel. I'm going to measure the perimeter. I'm going to send them a quote. It's a commodity type job, as we call it. And so there's no creative detail to it. We'll use Google Maps or we use Property Intel to just draw the perimeter of those landscape beds to highlight where the work is taking place. But then we look, on our true DB jobs, our design and build jobs, like it's a requirement. There's no
Mhm.
option. We switched this year from a fixed price design to an hourly design.
Okay.
We're not trying to win on designs. We're just trying not to lose. Basically, it's a time investment, and so if we can recover our designers' hours just on an hourly basis, we actually found it was cheaper for most and way more expensive for a couple, because you've got those two or three that just revision after revision after revision.
Oh
And
yeah.
so we finally said, screw it. That guy's going to pay a lot, or gal for that matter, but they're going to pay a lot of money for design fees. That's okay, because every time they do that, they're just going to get a bill on Friday for the work that we do. And so
Mhm.
that's kind of deterred the 10 revisions. People want to see it one way. They just want to see it and see it done. And
Yep.
so that's been a really positive change that we've made.
Got it. And have you found that the closing rate on those projects that would have otherwise wanted a few revisions to kind of tune it in? And I know there's the excessive amount where they just can't make their mind up and they're just kind of kicking the can down the street by asking you for new stuff and they don't have any intent on moving forward. But, barring those, but have you found a better or less close rate because of the fact that you aren't giving them so much leadway to adjust it or customize it to what they want?
Yeah, not a noticeable impact really. And the way our process is set up, we only really encourage really one set of in-depth revisions. And so we will shoot them pictures back and forth before the
Mhm.
concept presentation. But after the concept presentation, they're only taking a few things out. They're adjusting the beds to replace where we maybe took out a structure or some pavers. And that's it. Like there's not at the concept presentation, they're getting a price. And so they know if they take out the pavilion, they're going to save $56,000, say. Well,
Mhm.
then we just wrap the bed. We're going to add a few $1,000 there, but they already know. So it's no longer a price negotiation type tactic for a revision. It's instead purely aesthetic or a functional standpoint. And so not a ton of change from close ratio. In fact, I think it's actually gotten better because in doing this, we've really honed in and followed our process. We've stuck to our
Mhm.
guns. We just over and over and over, we're doing the same thing.
Got it. Yeah, that's very important. I'd love to get to systems in a moment here, but so what was your revenue in 2024?
A lot of indecision, a lot of okay, this looks really good. So are we going to do your business, or so we had a lot of stale jobs. They weren't lost, but just not ready to move forward. And that has certainly changed in Q1. We had one of our best sales quarters we've ever had,
Awesome.
but it certainly hurt 24 last year, just north of 4.5 million. Year prior in the four fours, and so that was very
Okay.
stagnant for us. We've
Yeah.
never done anything like that. But then you look kind of zoom out and look ahead to this year, budget 7.3, and so looks very aggressive. If we went to miss budget so significantly last year, it wouldn't look so impressive. Really, it would just look like another good growth year.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great, man. That's very good. So let's jump into sales process. Actually, before we get into sales process, what time in your business did you realize you needed to start integrating systems and you couldn't just be shooting off the hip? Like, was there a certain line or a certain revenue level that you're like, yeah, this isn't, we can't grow if we don't figure this part out, the systems part?
Not a certain point per se. Like there wasn't a crux where it's like you have to have systems. Now, in hindsight, looking back on it, the earlier you implement those systems, the easier it is to scale. The easier
Hmm.
it is to continue. What takes you to $500,000 isn't going to get you to $1 million, isn't going to get you to $2 million. And we had a couple year kind of process where we called it our winter to-do list. We had a big long list of tasks to do. And we realized that we were basically just copy and pasting these year after year, because we would do them, we'd break the system, and then we'd re-implement and kind of reinvent the wheel of that same system. It was a blessing, but growing that double to triple annually got to be a little too much for us. It slowly just kind of bites you in the butt over time. And so in hindsight, we would have grown just a touch slower. Thankful for all the opportunities we had, and we're blessed to be where we're at. But the earlier you can implement systems, regardless if it's sales, if it's operations, if it's HR and onboarding, if it's offboarding, that's a new system for us. We try to get exit interviews, a checklist of returning keys and uniforms and all that good stuff. And so it's going to make the growth a lot more controllable. You're not going to feel like you're just running around like a chicken with your head cut off, because you have systems to manage each process.
Yeah, that's so important. Instead of blaming a person for not doing it the way they've always done it, now you have a system you can adjust, and others can adapt to that system and actually see it and see the standard in which everything works on. And that's the secret to it all, really. So
Absolutely.
Why don't you take us through your current sales process for Design Build? If I was a customer, what would I experience with you guys?
Yeah, you're going to call in, you're going to get on the phone with Amanda. She does a fantastic job just grabbing the entry information. Simple questions, name, phone, email, service address, short description of the project. We're not going in depth. We're not asking advice. We're asking for detailed information. We're just merely grabbing kind of that contact form info via the phone. Mm-hmm. She will occasionally ask for a budget, or just say, hey, I've got it here that full softscape around the home starts about $12,000. I just wanted to, put that out there, and you don't have to agree or disagree to that. We'll talk about that with one of our designers as well. That gets popped over. We use HubSpot as our sales CRM. So it pops in there. We've got it split, so it automatically divides up who gets what leads based on just who's next. That way there is no subjectivity to it. We've got a mix of 1099 and W-2 designers here. And so we have folks that aren't in the office. I don't want there to ever be any bias. It shouldn't just go to somebody because it's X, because ultimately somebody would get loaded up with 10 pool jobs and can sell $2 million super easy. And somebody else doing that same thing in $2,000 jobs is going to be running. Yeah. I mean, improbable to get even half that. So once it happens, it's all now, it is a system, but it becomes a little bit more personal dependent. So our designers work a little bit differently. One loves email, one loves text messages and phone calls. And I don't really care. As long as they log it and I can see that the client's been taken care of. So we're setting up that initial consultation that's done via phone call or done via Google Meet. I strongly urge our team to do those via Google face-to-face. Even if you're not on site, it still gives the perception of being there, and you get to connect with somebody. You get to see the nonverbal cues of, if I say $20,000, does that person go, do they sit back, or do they okay, and lean in? Because those are two different perceptions, and you wouldn't know that on the phone. They can just say, okay, don't know kind of what they're doing. So we do that. And then before our on-site consultation, we have an executed design agreement. And so if they have any hesitations, they need any additional information, we're going to hash that out before we go on site. We want an accepted design agreement, and we really don't have a lot of give on that, because we've noticed that if somebody's not willing to sign that, they're not going to sign for the project either. They're just going to take our design, go shop it out, and go with the cheapest option. So instead, we get that signature. We tell them, hey, after the on-site, you could back out and don't owe us an extra dollar. You don't owe us anything. We're not billing for our time on site. We're just billing for computer design work. But we'll come out, grab all the in-field measurements that we need, really get a lay of the land, and have that in-depth conversation of, idea casting, and really getting clients excited about what is possible in their space, because a lot of them, they just don't know. And it's not their fault. We do this every day, so it's pretty easy for us to see that. From there, grab all that, go into design, and we're sending them, like I said, maybe one or two sneak peeks. Hey, am I on the right track? Is there anything different that you would like to see in this area? Do I have, you told me the pool goes this way. I've got it, flipped 90 degrees. Does one look better than the other? And so I can run with the right one. From there, into that concept presentation is what we call it. That is going to be, somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to 50% more expensive than their budget, but we're going to show them what's possible. Hey, we want a sport court. Okay, well, did you also want an artificial turf soccer field? Here you go. And just those things are oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. Now we don't have to mow, we don't have to irrigate, we don't have to do all these things. That's a great idea. And there's a lot of times that, budget is, say, a typical pool for us is, call it 200 to 220. We're going to show them something that's 250 to 270. We just want them to think about what is possible. Usually most of those items get pulled out. We might get one, and then it's into that final presentation. And we flat out call it's on our PDF that we send to clients in our 4-step process, but it's flat out called final presentation. We want them to know that is it. We're not going to go back and forth. We're not going to do anything like that. It says right in there that this meeting is meant to talk about construction timelines, construction processes, and anything specific that you want to know about the project. It's not about dollars anymore. Like that was in the concept. If we were too expensive and we couldn't get into budget, those were conversations we had in the concept meeting, not in the final meeting. And so when you take now dollars off the table, we found that there's a lot less friction to that close. They just want a chance to see the presentation again. They want to see what they're getting, what it's going to cost, and then talk about, hey, on this, we've got enough access, so we're actually going to install your fiberglass pool with an excavator instead of with a crane, and just little stuff like that. And we're now envisioning, or having them envision, the project in their backyard and going in. They're kind of thinking through it. And I just think it creates that assumed close. Like, oh yeah, you're going with us. We're just talking about how we're doing it today. So yeah. It's been a good change. It's been an exciting change, but yeah, it's been good.
That's great, because what you're doing is you're moving them from the what are we going to do to how are we going to do it, right? What is more of a discovery question, and how is momentum. We're starting to lock it down to the ground. So that's really cool. So what is something that you guys, like on your sales side, what is something you guys are just really, really good at?
As soon as you think you're good at something, I feel like you fall short and you stub your toe and realize you're not quite there yet. And that's kind of the attitude our team has is I think we do a lot of things really, really well. But the one thing we're not afraid of is to know that we need to continue to grow. And that's all of us as leaders, as sales reps, as production managers. So I think we do really, really well at design. I think we're probably one of the best in our local market at design, whether it's the creativity of it, or it's just how well done a 3D design could be, and just kind of the form of it, if you will. But I think with outside the box backyards, I think we're second to none. I think we do a fantastic job of that. We're priced competitive, but we're not, and everybody says this, but we're not cheap. We lose a lot of jobs because we're coming in, if somebody wants what I call a commodity pool or an efficiency pool, which is a pool and 4 feet of concrete around, we're going to lose. Yeah. We just are. And that's even less about price, but we're putting irrigation and sod repair on the quote, and the other guy's not. So he looks, $10,000 cheaper. And it's like, well, okay, you're going to end up spending more than you spent with him because you're going to go hire another contractor where there's no relationship. That's fine. But I want you to be aware. And so we really also pride ourselves on giving clients a full detailed scope, so they see it. Like, I don't want there to be a surprise. If I think there's a chance you might need a wall, I'm going to put a $12,000 wall in there. I might not, and I might get to credit that back to you. But I would rather show you the full picture today, so you're going to invest either this or less, not this or more. That's dangerous. That's not a good way to take care of a client, in my opinion.
It's not. And you're putting them in a situation where they feel a lot of uncertainty. If there's a lot of TBDs in your quote, they're like, well, it's $200K plus all these TBDs. Like, what is it, $500K? Are we talking $220K? Like, that just adds a lot of uncertainty, which then puts your clients on ice. They don't know what to do. You give them, we can't do that as sales professionals. Our job, our goal is to make sure that we are keeping things as certain as possible for them, so they can feel lots and lots of confidence to move forward with you, and not because if they have to compare between you and other people, and the other ones have a bunch of uncertainty, they don't know what it's going to cost at the end, and yours is very clear, nice guardrails on what that looks like. They feel like, all right, well, I can do that. That sounds good. Even if the other guys have better ideas, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. They're going to move what's going to make the most sense and the least amount of risk, right? So that's excellent, man. So what's something that you struggle with in your sales process? Something that you guys really need to really are focused on working on right now?
I think a little bit of it is finding out what we're really good at. And I say that because you always big jobs are sexy. I say that all the time, that, closing, we had a gentleman here that's actually moving to Japan. Today's his last day, unfortunately, but a couple weeks ago, he sold $300,000 in work, two 2 different jobs. Neither of them had a pool in our scope. And so sold some really big stuff. And it's like, okay, I'll be interested to see, like, are we any good at this? We've been doing this for years, but it's learning, like, what is our bread and butter? Is it, 180 square foot patios where we can bang them out in 2 days? Might be. Those aren't going to, get a bunch of views on social media, but those might be what put a lot of money in our designers and our company's pockets. Like that could be awesome. And so getting that data from the field and really getting it to a place where we can understand it, right? Getting production rates and field measurements to do time studies on how long does it take us to install 10 linear feet of coping? Okay. Is it 6-inch coping or 24-inch coping? Okay. But having all these production rates that are truly hand measured in the field that can come back to our sales team to be able to sell more accurately. And it just creates a great cycle. And I think eventually by doing that, you're going to hone in on what are we best at. And it might be a tough pill to swallow that we're not good at $500,000 backyards. Yeah. Okay. Well, at least we know, because there's no sense in going to do that there's no sense in doing a $500,000 backyard if it costs you $525 to do it. That's not a very good idea. It sounds stupid, but I know there's competitors of ours here and guys that I'd probably call friends, that it's like, I know you are paying that client to put an outdoor living space for them. I love what I do, but not enough to pay a client to do it.
No, I hear you, dude. There's a lot. I'm sure even some listening right now that they get excited. They get intoxicated by those massive projects. I know I did when I first got started. But it's a big project, corner lot, new development. I would have paid them to do the project. And I kept bringing my price down because they knew they had themselves a really good spot, and they knew that I wanted it because it was all over my face, right? I was like, I was so excited about the project. And then they're like, all right, well, can you do it? You said 87,300 to do it. Can you do it for 79? And I'm like, yes, I'll take it. Right. And at the end of the day, it cost me to put it in, but I'm like, well, then I justify the heck out of it. You know what? It's a corner lot. It's a new development. I'll sell a ton more. And sometimes that happened and sometimes it didn't happen. Right.
My favorite is I'll tell all my friends about you. It's like, oh, great.
Yeah. Oh yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. When they call me, I'll give you $1,000.
Yeah, exactly.
And imagine that they never talk about that again. It's like,
you bring up such a good point, because I don't know how I could write a book on how many times people told me that. Well, I'll tell all my friends about you. All the neighborhood, we have these big parties. I'm going to just be talking left and right. You're going to get so much work in here. Give me a good price and I'll make sure everybody else knows about you. And you know, the crazy part, what I've learned over the years, Sam, is that when I hear that, especially if they lead with that or add that in within the first couple of meetings, I immediately know it's bullshit. Right? Because I found the ones that don't say anything about that, love what you did, are the ones that talk the most. The ones that say they're going to talk and you did a great job and you did it even at cost, they don't talk. Or they have friends like them who want to knock you back down again on your price. And it's like, I don't want more of you people. Oh,
yeah, that's the struggle. And those are typically the people that are the slowest payers. Yeah. They always have a hang up, and it's like, okay, I understand that a shrub needs replaced. You're right. But our warranty doesn't start until you pay your bill. And we just tell and that's where we have the issues. And so we're very black and white when it comes to payments. Like, I don't handle them. Our sales reps don't handle them, even though it affects our sales reps' commissions because they get paid on paid. Our production manager, he's like, I don't care. Like, this is the contract I was given that you signed, right? And they're like, yeah. I said, okay, well, all hardscape materials on site. Everything's here. You owe me money. You owe me money. That's all. That's all there is. And have taken some of the feeling out of it. And we get pretty sterile when it comes to money. We're not spending money out of our own pocket. Our production manager's not spending money out of his. When we hit a milestone, we get paid. If there's something to fix, we fix it. But we've got to follow the rules, both sides. I will follow the contract. You do as well.
That's huge, listeners out there. You are not the bank. You are not the bank. Customer pays you 10 grand and you spend 10 grand. You don't pull 10 grand out of your pocket and then wait for the client to send you that on Tuesday after they get paid or whatever, because it doesn't happen and it throws your cash flow all over the place. You cannot grow and scale a business that way. You must make sure your clients are paying you and then you pay your bills. That is the order it must be in, because if not, you will be the bank and you will, at the end of the year, well, a bank actually has money at the end of the year. You won't. That's the problem, right?
Correct.
How did you learn that? What are some of the stories you can tell us about how you learned that?
I got too many to count. First one, and probably the best one, would be we did a backyard. It was started at 2.25, ended up 400. This was in 2020, maybe 2021. So very early on. There was no reason this client should have ever trusted me to do this backyard. And we did a fantastic job. 9-hole putting green course, in-ground trampoline, sport court, 2,400 square foot of pavers, I think almost 1,000 plants, like just massive. And it just kept growing. Every time we walked the property together, he would add $25,000 in work. Why don't we add a wall right there? Why don't we? And it's like, okay, man, I got you. But it got sticky because not everything was signed. A lot of handshakes, a lot of hearsay. And so one of the easiest takeaways I did was, if I did a change order with a client, or I walked the site and the client wanted to add a seating wall, or wanted to make the seating wall bigger, something simple, right? I would give him a ballpark price, and I would just say, hey, John, I'm going to guesstimate this is going to be about an extra $2,500. I'll be within 10% of that number. Text me, a yes to confirm, and we'll get started, and I'll get a written change order to you to get signed. Because at least in a court of law, you have something. Mm-hmm. You have an agreement. And so I usually will just put, the way I did it was sales rep, production manager, husband, wife. Put them in a group chat. And then everybody knows what was talked about. And I was pretty descriptive, extend seating wall 3 feet. And, that was enough. So you didn't get burned. Well, none of this is signed. Well, yeah. And then you just got to put your tail between your legs to the client and say, you're right. But then B, it then allows you to change your payment terms, to decide on them instead of just collecting for that at the end. We're 100% due upon acceptance for a change order. Doesn't matter what it is. If we add a change order that's 50% of the project value, that's great. Write me a check.
Yep. Because
I'm going to get started and order those materials and pay. Like, everything's going now. And so I don't have time to iron this out over time. Like, nope, pay me the check right now. And we don't have any issues on it. It's written clearly in our contract, and we don't really get any pushback on it because clients know that if they're signing a change order, they're going to see that in the next, week, if you will. They'll see it right away. And then the other thing is they know that you're good for it. Like, you're already doing the work. You're doing a great job. You're providing a great client experience. They no longer have to worry about you showing up to do the work. Where that deposit can be scary because that's a piece of trust. The change order acceptance payment, 100%. That's not a big deal to them. That's a lot of times just, yep, I get it, sign, done.
Plus you're already there, right? So you're already kind of, everything's moving forward. The train's on tracks, it's rolling along, and you're just adding some stuff in there. But to get that 100% deposit, if you will, right? Payment on that change order, 100%. That's
sure
either
be cool
you are
if it was.
Yeah, but think about it. Listeners, if you're the kind of company like I was in the beginning, afraid to have those conversations, you just kept saying yes to the clients. So can I add that? Yeah, no problem. I'm just going to tack it to the end of the bill because A, I didn't know what the price was going to be, and B, I didn't want to have any kind of confrontation with the client. So I would get it. And then next thing you know, that $10,000 project was $18,000. And I show up there with my head down, shoulders down a little bit, being like, here's your final bill, Mrs. Jones. And it's $18,000. And she just gives me this look like, I didn't know it was going to be that much more. And it's already built. It's already in the backyard. And now we go into negotiation. Well, think we can do it for 16. No, we can't do it for 16. How about 16.5? And then we're back and forth and I'm losing money, all because I didn't have the guts or a system in place in order to make sure that we were covered. Because think about it at the end, Sam, and I know you know this, but even listeners, like, think about it. At the end of the day, when you walk away with that potentially reduced value in that check, they still get the whole value of the backyard. Their entire backyard is still there, right? So for them, you're like, well, you just got a deal and I just got screwed and I'm the one that did all the work.
Yeah. Most of the time, our payment terms, we're only leaving 2.5% to 5% at the end of the job.
Yeah.
Because once you get to the end of the job, you have zero power left.
That's right. Leverage is gone.
Zero. Yep. And the client's got it all. And so again, with, our payment terms, we've got on a backyard with a pool, for example, like I said, 200 to 220 is kind of that normal range for us. Most of the time we're sitting, I think it's 6 or 7 payments, and it's a 6 or 7 week project. And so we get a deposit, and then we get one that's on commencement. And so we're getting 40 up front, basically 40 to 50% up front. And then the rest of it is structured on, pool dropped and pool dropped and rough plumbing complete, done. Bond beam poured, done. Pavers on site, pool deck complete, softscape complete, lighting and final walkthrough. We just, and I tell clients, like, it's almost annoyingly so, but you and I would both rather have it where neither of us are too far out of whack, right?
Yep.
You've only paid for what's getting done, and I'm getting paid for what I did. I don't want to make you the bank. That's not fair. You shouldn't have to pay, 75% on day one because you've only received a little bit of the work. And contrary, I'm not going to be the bank. I'm not going to do all this work and then submit an invoice and hopefully get paid in 30 days. Like, nope, when I get to this, and I'm going to submit the invoice probably a day before, so you have time to write that check tonight, and then tomorrow when we show up, we'll accept that check because we finished it at 5 o'clock, and so the next day we can pick up that check, and it goes pretty well. We just don't make it negotiable. Like, oh, I gotta move money from my 401k, or I've heard them all, and I just tell them, like, that's great. Why don't you move it all now? Because unfortunately, we won't wait 3 days on the next one. I just won't. Like, I'll pull the guys, and then we'll charge you for demobilization fees. Like, we've seen it, and so we've gotten a little bit, I don't want to say prickish, but we know what that does to the client experience if we have all these delays. It might be okay to them, but if they just follow our rules, it's going to be a great experience. We know it. We've seen it over and over. And so we just kind of hold to our guns, and it seems to go much better.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but this is all set up through expectations very early in the process. This isn't something that's surprised. You're not going along and you're like, hey, Mrs. Jones, I need 50% up front. Oh, day 2, give me another 25%. And day 3, give me 10%. Like, and with no set benchmarks moving through. So tell us how you actually set those benchmarks so the client knows, all right, I need to sell those 401k assets so I can have the cash or have it liquid or however they're paying you in chickens, whatever it is, right? To make sure that you have, that they're prepared for what you're going to ask for. Because when you set expectations and deliver on those expectations, things are much easier. But it's when you don't have that conversation and then expect them to just know how this works, that's where you hit the wall or hit that friction. So tell us about that.
Yeah, that's all right at the top of our terms, edited for every project. We don't want, like, a softscape job. If it's a 3 or 4 day softscape, we'll do a deposit, a check upon commencement, and a check upon completion. I don't want a check a day. That's a bit extreme. And a lot of times for projects under $7,500, I'll take a credit card. I don't care. It's not a big enough hit where, if a job doesn't require a production manager to go to the site every single day, take the 3% hit. Like, just, it's fine. It's going to be, what would that be? $21, $210. I wish it was only $21, but the $210, like, by the time a production manager drives there and drives back 3 times, his time is more valuable than that. And so just accept the card. We call what you were just talking about, though, we call that setting the goalposts. We've got to have a clear definition of a win. We also follow a lot of the Sandler sales techniques of, we set up front contracts. Hey, Josh, thanks for hopping on this podcast with me. You still clear for 30 minutes? And you're going to say, yep. Well, you just signed a verbal contract with me that you're going to give me your attention for 30 minutes. And so we do that with our clients to start every single meeting. Hey, at the end of this meeting, we're going to have clear takeaways on what the next step is, what exactly you're looking for in the backyard, and we're going to have a set budget. Does that make sense? Is that fair? And you say, yep. It's like, okay, well, now you've verbalized to yourself and you've mentally understood that I'm going to have to come up with a budget today. I'm going to know what the next steps are, and we're going to have a clear picture of what the job is. And so setting that agreement up front just makes it easier to progress through the call, because now you have 3 bullet points to attack. And we found here that it just, when you talk about a big process, if we talk about a process within just a certain meeting, those goalposts are going to change for every meeting. But if we can make them the same meeting to meeting, it makes it easier to work with the next client, the next client, the next client.
Well, I mean, the question was more directed toward how you set it up for your deposit structure for the project. You had mentioned you have different targets that you have throughout the project to get paid. So by the end, you only have a handful of money that's left over. Because the last thing you want to do, guys, is get a 50% up front and then do a 3-month project and then be sitting on 20, 30, 40, 50% at the end. And then your client has all the leverage because that one tulip didn't come up. Now, all of a sudden they want all kinds of things done around the house, or this light didn't work and they're holding, I mean, I've had that happen in the past before we set systems in place. It was like 50 grand sitting on the table with a gun to its head because 2 lights didn't work in the project. And you're like, I got guys to pay. I got equipment to pay for. I've got materials to pay for. And you're holding for weeks because I had to order this light and the light was not available and it was back ordered. And then we're like, you start sweating. It's like, no. We're never going to do that again. Never going to do that again. We're going to set some clear goals. The client pays. That's setting the expectation up front. Don't surprise them, and have certain, set parts of the project and start saying, look, 25% is going to be due here. 10%. I don't ask for $1 until I've performed completely in that task. Like whatever it's going to be. I'm not asking for money that I didn't work for. I just want to make sure that we aren't backwards in this project.
I agree. I've heard of actually a very very simple one, but a guy I know, he would take a 30% deposit, and then any job longer than 2 weeks, he would bill 50% on Monday, due on Friday, of remaining balance.
Hmm.
And I was like, you know what? That's not bad. And then balance due upon completion. So your payments get smaller,
Yep.
which speeds up your cash flow because you're going to get it at the beginning. But I thought that was interesting. The way we do it is we just look at our work areas. We use Aspire, and I'm, I love it. I do. I think LMN's awesome. About any of them are great if you use them the way that they designed them to be used. But you can do like an earned model where you can create an invoice on, say Monday, for any revenue you earned last week. And it's based on materials you allocated to the job, labor hours you spent on the job. And so we've considered doing it like that. But instead, we just look at, our softscape, plantings, hardscape, pool, they're all separate work areas. And so we just look and say, well, okay, the hardscape is 30% of this job. Well, upon completion, then we need 20%, because chances are good that, unfortunately, we're going to go over hours a little bit on the hardscape, it seems like. But that is just the fair way to break it out in the payment terms. So then they're not paying 15% for their softscape when it's only 5% of the job.
Yep.
We try to just align things quite well. And again, like I said, we talk about it in our final meeting. And so they know what they're signing. It's clearly written on the document that they're signing of what the payment schedule is. We don't want to surprise them. Like you said, that's a very, very poor tactic. And it doesn't create customers for life. It doesn't create long-term raving fans. It doesn't help that client experience like we want it to.
No, 100%. That's the antithesis of that. So that's very good. Hey, man. So I've appreciated our conversation so far. As we wrap up here, is there any wisdom that somebody bestowed upon you as you were, growing your business, that you have really felt that it's been like this thing that has really helped, like the center of your decision making, or something in your business that you're like, wow, thank God that person said that to me, because it's made all the difference? Anything like that for you?
Yeah. So not a ton. And we as entrepreneurs get a lot of advice from people who have never done what we do. I use an example of my wife, that I was talking to her about a scenario with an individual that no longer works here, and she's like, "We got to fire him." It's like, that's what a textbook would probably tell me to do, but you can't do that because of X, Y, and Z and ABC, and now we have to give a performance improvement plan and do this, and so I always guide folks to listen to experience, don't listen to advice. Those are two different things, and experience doesn't necessarily need to be in the same industry, but somebody that's done what you're wanting to do is huge. One of my favorites, inspect what you expect. What gets measured gets managed. We've really been big on that. What gets measured gets managed. We're putting a lot of data out in front of our teams now. Select data points, because I don't want to get our team confused. Reading a full P&L is a challenge, even for somebody that does it quite frequently. And so we're looking at labor efficiency, budgeted hours, actual hours. Like let's make this very simple. The last thing is I'll say is it's way harder than you think. Last year was a challenging year, and it forced me to be a bit agile, even to get to where we were, which wasn't excellent. This year we've made the changes that we needed to last year during the year that didn't come to fruition during the season, but paved the way for, like I said, the hottest Q1 we've ever had, $300,000 ahead on the bottom line. Like we're crushing it this year, to where the results are already showing themselves. It's going to be harder than you think. You've got to be quick. You've got to be able to change, take that information and implement. Hopefully I provided something today. Take one thing, because the rest I said could be fluff to somebody that doesn't agree with it, and that's fine. But hopefully something I said resonates today, that somebody can be just that 1% better for.
I appreciate that, Sam. And yeah, you've definitely dropped a lot of great gold nuggets, and I'm sure the listeners were picking up, probably taking notes during some of that time as well. There's some great ones there. So Sam, if somebody wants to reach out and take a look at what you're doing over there at Etch Outdoor, what's the best way for them to find you?
Just that at Etch Outdoor on Instagram. That's where I'm most active. I cannot take any credit for being the one that actually posts anything on that page. It's all my wife, thankfully, because otherwise nothing would get posted. Yeah. But she does a great job on there, keeping people up to date with what we are doing every single day. And then reach out, send me a message. I love to help. If you have questions, I'll jump on an Instagram video call with you, like a FaceTime, and we can chat for 5 or 10 minutes. I'll give you a call. I mean, I love to see people grow. And, it's my opportunity to give back. I watched YouTube videos to really learn how to run this business. And that's how we got started. And so now it's my turn, to pour into the next group of 18-year-olds that are hungrier than I ever was or could ever dream to be. And, exciting to see the positive impacts that our industry has made. It's been an awesome change. People like you holding podcasts to teach people. It's been cool to see, where kind of, I'm going to date myself here maybe a little bit, but like the old generation, and then you've got my group, and then you've got, the young generation coming. It's been cool to see the changes that are made.
100%, man. And there's nothing better than as you start, gaining wisdom in your older age, right? You start thinking like, all right, well, all this wisdom that I've learned, all these scars and broken bones that I have, I can finally use them for something even more than just for myself. And it's to give it away. And I appreciate you coming on here and investing your most precious asset, your time, to share your truth and what you've done.
Yeah.
So it's amazing, Sam. Thanks for coming on. And listeners, it's an amazing thing that we get to do. It's such a blessing every day to be able to serve our clients in the way we do. And some days are challenging and some days are simpler. And, that's really the beautiful part about what we do. Not every day is the same. And I don't know that I could be in an industry where everything was always the same. I love the nuances, the new stuff, but always remember, problems are the gifts that we grow from. And if we embrace problems, we will grow automatically. If we're scared of problems and we're constantly trying to stay in a really simple, like straight line of life where I don't ever have any problems, no ups or downs, none of that stuff, just kind of simple. Well, the problem is you're not going to light your soul up. Your soul gets lit up in those problems because that's really where you got to learn. You're forced to grow. And the goal that we're after isn't always, say you want to hit 1 million or 5 million or whatever it is. Once you get there, then what? It's not just about that numeric or that financial goal. It's about the person you need to become in order to reach that goal is really the target. That's the fun part. You've got to become, because if you're running a $300,000 company now and you want to get to 3 million, the person you are today is not the person that can run a $3 million company yet. That's the exciting part. You get to become. It's the becoming that keeps us all on track here. It's the growth. I couldn't do that last year, but I did it this year. That's why we track numbers. They're a simple scoreboard, but your team has to grow. Your ability has to grow. Your systems have to grow. All of that has to grow in order to get there. So I appreciate every one of you guys listening, and that because if you're listening to this podcast or others, you're automatically starting to grow. And that's important. You're reaching out, trying to listen to how others are doing it. And that is awesome. So I congratulate you guys. Thank you for listening as always. Sam, thanks for coming on, and we'll see you next week.